So, I mean, I think, we're going to talk about how women sell their brand today, aren't we?
Mm.
And not just their brand, it's, how do they portray themselves to the media, to in a confident way that isn't too sort of salesy, and that is genuine, isn't it? So I think that's where the kind of struggle is, really.
I think so, and I think for a lot of us women, it's because actually people are buying from us, and we're the face behind that brand, and we are in many cases that brand. Like, so for us, actually people buy our services because they like us and they trust us. So actually it's really important, isn't it, that we're able to put ourselves across confidently, so that people can know who we are, but also build that trust in us. But that can be quite a hard thing to do, and actually that's something that a lot of people that I speak to struggle with, because they're in a similar situation, whether you're a cake maker, because actually you look online, and all the cakes might look the same, so you're probably the thing that's going to sell it for you is the person, isn't it? So I think in many ways we all have to learn to sell ourselves as much as the products and services we provide.
I was having a chat with some women, actually, that I did some coaching with a few months ago, and we had a little reunion. It was really nice. We just met in a cafe down the road, and we were talking about, and I think this is basically where it all starts from, is women aren't very good at taking compliments. A lot of women aren't, are we? We go, so someone will say, oh, I really like your top, and they'll go, oh, I've had it ages, it's really old, or I got it in a charity shop, it was really cheap, or and we were sort of saying how we've just got to learn to say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks. Not apologize for and come up with a whole series of reasons why, if someone says your hair looks nice, say, oh, don't go, oh, it's looking really awful today, oh, I thought it looked terrible. No, say, oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't want to kind of go on about it, just learn to stop.
But a lot of that is, I suppose, how we've been conditioned, though, isn't it? It's, I think, our generation were brought up not to shout about how good we were, and that makes it quite difficult to accept compliments, or to say, hey, look, this piece of work I've done, I'm really proud of it, because it's almost seen as bragging, and I think it's partly a woman thing. I don't think men are necessarily brought up in the same way, although that's not to say that some don't feel that way, but yeah, I think it's a lot about how we're brought up. I don't know whether the future generations will feel differently, because I think we do try and celebrate our successes a little bit more now, particularly with our children, but certainly with the women that I coach, it's a massive thing. They're really worried about putting themselves forward in case it's seen as being a bit of a brag or something.
One of the women that I was coaching recently, she is so talented, and I genuinely, absolutely love her designs. They are fabulous. And she says that she feels like she's begging when she tries to sell something. And she goes, oh, I've got to stop begging. How do I stop begging? And so I said, well, write your sales pitch and let's have a look at it. So she wrote her sales pitch and sent it to me. And I said to her, before you write it, stand up straight, look at yourself in the mirror and say, get some positive affirmations going, that actually I deserve to be recognized. I am really good at what I do. I have got talent and ability, and actually people will want my designs, whatever you need to do. Say all those things. Embody, you've got to embody. It's all, we think it's all in the head, but actually it's in your body as well.
Absolutely.
Get really centered and feel strong and breathe deeply, and then go and write your pitch. So she did, and she wrote a pitch. It was so much better, but it still had, I still had to make a few adjustments where you could just see this little, I don't know, coming in. And that's the thing, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you said, actually those, that standing tall thing, you need to embody everything, don't you? And I tell people this when we talk about things like leadership. It's exactly the same thing in terms of that overall confidence, in terms of portraying yourself in a way where how others want to see, or how you want others to see you. So you have to do that, and to get that thread going through everything that you do. So yeah, I think that's a really good tip.
That's really good what you just said about, because you might sometimes not feel it. And so you almost have to, imagine that you've made that sale, that you have been successful. Because it is practice. And if you've had years and years of this, your inner critic saying to you, you're not actually very good, and who do you think you are? Your designs are rubbish, or what you're trying to sell, you're no good as a coach, what do you know? Or all of those sort of, horrible little negative voices. And so we kind of need to, and that's where this embodiment comes from. Because when you get centered and you feel the energy coming from your body, it just does affect your mind and your confidence. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes natural to you. So if you're, like you said, if you're a leader and you've practiced it, you might be feeling pretty damn nervous underneath. But actually, if you're there in front of people and you're showing leadership, that's all you need to do. And then when you're out of that environment, you then replenish and renourish and gain more strength.
Yeah, and you have that cycle of feedback, don't you? Because actually, once you've had that positive reinforcement from your audience, that's going to then reinforce that feeling that, actually, maybe I am good at what I do. There's a little bit of maybe faking it to make it to some extent, but then the confidence grows for real, doesn't it? So it is really powerful stuff. And I remember listening to somebody who, and it's true that she said, actually, the saying "chin up" is literally about that posture and the fact that we feel so much better, because if we have our chin down, we feel very small and not very powerful at all. As soon as we lift our chin up, we feel so much better. So it's just a really simple thing that you can do. And if you are speaking to an audience and they see you, they're not going to hear you. They may not be able to hear you that well, but they will perceive you to be really strong. And that's what we want. And I think, when I speak to a lot of the women that I work with, they're reluctant to put themselves forward sometimes. But then when they see somebody else they know who may not be as good as them, achieving a higher level of success, it's the difference is not about their ability or anything else. It's usually about their confidence to put themselves forward and to sell themselves, whether that's selling products, or whether it's just, saying, look, I'm here. This is what
and if you are selling things and you're feeling that it's like anything really, you've got to, if you put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're trying to influence, say, so whether that's sales or leadership or anything, it's very much about being grounded in who that person is that you're trying to influence. So for me, for example, that's why it's really useful when somebody else looks at your pitch that you've done, because they're looking at it from a whole different perspective than you are. And that eventually comes with practice, doesn't it? You start to think, oh, well, actually, now I see that I am a bit begging, or I am a bit apologetic, or I am a bit this or whatever. But if you see it as somebody who's on the receiving end and you read it, you think, well, actually, you could see it a bit more, you could see through your own words. So it's really important to place yourself in different positions to sort of look back at what you're trying to sell to or whatever.
Yeah.
Because then you get, I mean, I always say this with marketing, you know, again, with, if you're, as you know, you and I, we both work a lot in primary care with teams and leaders there. And so, you know, they need to put themselves sometimes in the patient's point of view. You know, we're sort of all trying to understand people's point of view. Well, actually, we're all people, we're all patients, we're all experiencing the same thing. Let's come from where we're at, you know. So again, that's another important starting place.
It is, yeah. And that, you know, that is a really great technique to use, isn't it? Is that perceptual positioning, which is literally putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and often, obviously, if we don't do that, it can lead to miscommunication, but it can also lead to not being able to offer people what they need or want. And I say from a sales point of view, actually, by literally putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, you can say, well, actually, what would I need to hear to know that this person can deliver something good for me, or it's going to give me the reassurance that it's going to make me want to buy. And if we suddenly see it through a different lens, we're going to be much better placed to provide that. And to be unafraid to do that, because if we hold ourselves back in our copy or whatever it is that we're providing, then it's just never going to hit the mark, is it?
No, and I think it's almost like the person receiving it can almost see through it. So the key things that we've covered really are to come from, to you know, if you're feeling that, you know, lack of confidence about what you're trying to, you know, present to the public, whether it's a brand or your business, or whether you're about to lead a team through something, whatever it is, it's to center your body and to come from the body, not just think about the head and the mind. So get that whole connection going. And if you're not feeling it, then I suggest you go. I mean, what I find really helpful is to just go for a walk, get that sort of energy going and that feeling, and, you know, stretching, breathing, whatever. You don't have to go for a 10-mile hike, you know, just and nature is really great, isn't it? That sort of being sensitive and drawing energy from nature.
But also just imagining yourself with that level of success. So I've got a client who used to be a pilot. So now he's in a completely different role. But when he's about to secure a deal, he just imagines himself flying his plane, because that's when he literally feels on top of the world. He feels his most confident and at his best, and very unafraid, actually. So he can capture that moment, and that feeling gives him the confidence to move ahead. And
it's just reminded me, actually, when you said to feel afraid, because I don't know if you know, I was brought up on musicals, basically. All the musical, Rodgers and Hammerstein, all of that. And I think it's from Carousel. And it's the song when this woman sings, "Whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head erect and whistle that happy tune, and no one will suspect I'm afraid." And it goes on.
Exactly what it is.
I often sing that, you know, while shivering in my shoes, I strike a careless pose and whistle a happy tune, and no one ever knows I'm afraid. So it's just do whatever get yourself going, really, isn't it? And then I think when it comes to that inner critic, I think we're going to cover that in another discussion, because that's a whole other thing. But it's bringing it all together, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. I think it's good to have like little snippets of hints and tips, because actually it's not too much to listen to. But I mean, this, as you said, borders on that imposter syndrome topic and inner critic, and those are massive topics now. So we can always